Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut Shop. This is a 2018 Toyota Highlander. Usually a car like that comes in the shop, 50,000, just over 50,000 miles. It's in for maintenance, coolant, fluids, oil change, whatnot, maybe brakes, that's about it. But this particular car, things went bad first and then they went really bad. And it breaks my heart because the owner of this car, first, such a fine gentleman. Second thing is, he tried to attempt something DIY, and one tiny mistake is going to cost them $1,500. Small mistake they made. It breaks my heart, and I want to use this example for you DIYers out there. You got to pay attention to the little stuff, because the little stuff is what you miss and things go really south. Let's start with the video. I'll tell you the story of what happened. We're actually going to fix it in this video and make sure everything is good for the customer so they can take it back on the road and we're good to go right after this. So here's how the snowball effect started with this car. 56,000 miles, something like that, miles on this car. Started with a wheel bearing noise. Initially came in, we actually inspected this a while back. Told him, needs a wheel bearing, nothing crazy about it. Kind of early. And I even asked him, was this car an accident? Because it's a little bit early for a wheel bearing to go. Customer at the time said, it's not too bad, I'll wait for it to get a little worse, then we'll address it. Well, I guess somewhere in between that time and now, it got worse. The owner of the car, awesome gentleman, he does DIY stuff, he does brakes, he does everything. He decided to take on the project. Did the wheel bearing, everything went smoothly, got the wheel bearing in, great, car is quiet, but now we have ABS codes. He pulled the sensor to check if anything went south. Well, the sensor was broken. So he figured, okay, when I did the job, maybe I knocked the sensor or something and it broke. He replaced the sensor and it still has the codes. He initially at that point thought, okay, we have an electrical problem, something crazy is going on. But unfortunately, that is not actually what happened. In order to show you what happened, we're going to show you on the car itself, but it's a very unfortunate situation because he made a single mistake that caused this entire thing and requiring us now to replace the axle on this car. Let's do this. So you can actually see it. It's easier to see it than explain it. Let me pull this car on the lift. Let's pull the rear wheel, pull the wheel bearing out again, and I'll show you actually what happened and how we're going to fix it. So let me show you what happened. If you look in this area right here, do you see how the axle is right here? And then you have this opening. Do you see how wide open it is? And the sensor is right in this area? Hope you can see that. See how the sensor is not really actually reaching? You notice how this is wide open. I mean, any debris, salt, whatever from the street is just gonna get right in there. And that's exactly what happened with this car. Because if you look at this side, do you see that ring around the axle? How it's not wide open? That's what happened with this car. Let's go look at the new axle. Yeah, we're replacing the axle, and I'll tell you why. Here's a brand new axle. Oh man, here we go. This is the ring that you're looking at there. So here's what happened. This plying point is where the bearings are actually going to sit on, and this is where your axle nut will go. Here's your axle nut. So the bearing loves to seize on this. Not severely seize, but remember, this part moves. So you can move this entire axle in and out. So when you're getting your bearing out, you're supposed to push this in, free it up, and then pull the bearing with a puller. Well, the owner of this car did not do that. They tried to get the bearing out. It was seized here, so it started pulling the axle. This ring got deformed, completely deformed. So when this got bent up, the sensor started going behind this. So the sensor is supposed to go in front and read off the magnetic part of the bearing. It actually started going behind it. The first time, this sharp edge literally cut the sensor off. Now the second sensor that they installed also did the same thing. So here's what we tried to do. Off camera, of course, I'm trying to get not having them buy this giant axle for $500 plus the labor to get it out. Here's the problem. This is not a piece you can buy separate. And if you run this car without it, it'll be fine. I can just put a sensor right now as it is, call it a day. But I give it a month or two, they'll be back, because there'll be all kinds of debris at the tip of the sensor, and then the bearing will fail again and again and again. I actually gave that option to the customer. Like, hey, if the budget is tight, I mean, you can go on it like that, but just know in the future, we might have to redo that bearing all over again. He's like, no, 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 no. I want it fixed right. I admit things went south, but it is what it is. We learn, we live and learn, and there's never price on learning. I tried to straighten the piece that went here. Two problems with that. First, look at the kind of the complicated curvature of this. It curves here, then it goes down, then it has like a curve up. I tried my best to straighten it out. Not gonna happen. Then it got to a point where I was like, all right, this may work and this is close, but now you can't get it back on the axle because it literally just, the circle here is no longer a circle. And at that point, you get to a certain point, I spend a couple hours trying to get this thing straight. It's not going in, and if we force it in, if it comes off while we're driving, it's going to do the same thing, and we're back to square one. The customer will basically tell me, well, you fixed the car, and now we're back with the same problem. That's not how automotive repair works, folks. You got to repair a car, we're done, have a nice day. So this is what happened. We have to replace this axle. This axle is very expensive. Speed sensor, again. This is just the axle nut. This job, unfortunately, didn't go well. So, let's fix it. I'll get everything out. You'll see it. Let's get this wheel off. Let's start disassembling everything. Axle is a little bit of a involved axle on this car. And I am wondering, and this is the big wonder here, we're probably going to have to unload the spring, which I really don't want to do, but I think we're going to have to, because I have no room to swing this axle out. We're going to try everything to do this as minimal invasive as possible, but yeah, there's the only way to know how this is going to go. Let's just get it done. This is a limited Highlander with these clad wheels, basically a glorified hubcap on the top trim. So here is a small thing about Toyota engineering, if you're watching. This is not staked because we were actually looking into this. I just put it on because I knew we were going to take it off. But something about Toyota engineering, if you guys are watching, try not to do stuff like that. So normally all Toyota brakes, you can get in the back here with a power tool and just take these off and we're good. This one, they gave you literally no space. You have to take everything by hand. That's a small gripe from the professional community. Now DIYers, they won't mind. They usually do stuff by hand, but do this every day and take everything by hand like that, and you will not be around long enough. So that's why we use power tools, but not on this one. So it's a small complaint. These are some aftermarket brakes. Looking at the brand here, Element, whatever that is. If I say it's not a good brand, someone will come out and say they're the best. So if you know anything about this brand, actually, I've never seen that. But I think though, and this is something for our DIYer in trouble here, I think they pad slap this, and don't do that. It's not a good idea. Okay, so here's what we got. Got to take the axle nuts. Uh-oh. Oh. Here's the problem. You see if this axle is stuck. Stuck to the splines right here are stuck to the axle. So let's talk about this. I see a lot of mistakes that could happen here. We're all about our DIY community doing things right. I see folks, and I already see it, the hammer marks on the side. Don't take a hammer and start hitting the face of this. Because what you're going to end up doing, you're going to mushroom this, and then when you go install your axle nut, it won't go. If you're gonna push on this, you're gonna use a pointy chisel, put it right here in the center, and tap it. Because we have the fancy tools, air hammer also works. I want you to watch how this is gonna go in. See how it's loose? That's what you want to do before you remove your bearing. So now it's detached from the bearing. Now we can get our bearing out. That's the mistake that happened with this car. So we were pulling on this, but we were also pulling the axle, and then eventually it kind of bent that whole shield, and that's the end of that. Now this style, for some reason, and this is interesting to me because this is too new of a car, they changed the bolts for the bearing from the back. Good thing they're accessible, so let's lift the car up a little bit. We'll get to them, get them out, get this going. So these are the bolts that hold the bearing in. They're just 4 bolts. So I'm gonna take them out. They're 17s. Yeah, just had them out yesterday, so come right out. And I'm gonna get to the other 2. Why am I so short? All right. Let's lower the car and get this last one. There we go. Let me lower the car. We'll get the bearing out. We'll take a look at what we got. So we're going to double check that our axle is detached, which it is. Now this bearing, we just had it out, so it's not really stuck. This is actually a new bearing, folks, and this is what you were looking at from the outside. This is a magnetic strip. Here's that sensor, which of course the sensor, half of it is gone. This is where it reads off of. That's how it picks up the speed sensor signal, the wheel speed. So when you push on this, so you see what happened is the bearing came off, and that ring that we were talking about, if you come see it right here, that ring was right here. See where the shadow of it is? You were pulling on this, and it literally bent the ring on the edge right here, and that's what destroyed this whole thing. It's pretty sad. It does break my heart, but you know what, folks? This is the advice that I would like you to take from this. These little stuff, they can happen to anybody. I don't think this should be a reason for this particular gentleman to stop doing DIY work, although he might be discouraged at this point. But you know what? You can go to school, you can work on cars, you can do this and that. The best way to learn is when things like this happen. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth, folks. Any mechanic will tell you, the best education for mechanics is when things go south. That's bottom line. Because I don't run into this, because I don't pull a bearing with the axle seized on it, but if you're a DIYer, you didn't assume that that was the case. I mean, you're following the book. The book doesn't tell you to free this up from that, because they're assuming this is a brand new car and things will just come right out. But that never happens. So I'm actually looking here, and I think we're actually not going to have to disturb a thing. I think we're going to be able to pull this axle through here and down and out. But I'm going to first get this wheel, the speed sensor out, although it's damaged and done, but I just want it out of the way. Let me get the speed sensor out, which is just held in by one 10mm here. There we go. So I'm going to pull this out. See this? The edge of it? It's actually cut, folks. Hope you can see how it's cut. Let me grab the new one and you'll see it. How much shorter that is than how it's supposed to be. See how the tip of this is gone? I hope you can see that this one is longer than this one. And if you look really close here, you can actually see part of the coil is actually cut. That's why the sensor is open circuit. It's not even reading anything. That's what happened with this car. Things happen, folks. I always say this. Don't let this stuff discourage you. Yes, He could have gone back and done this himself, but he's discouraged. I get it. And now we're replacing an axle. And actually, I'm looking at this now. We were assuming we were going to have to uncompress this and take this, but if I'm able to get this axle, which I'm pretty sure we can, might be tight, but we'll try it. If I am, I'm going to drop the labor on this because I think the labor will be too high at that point. Let's lift it up again. Gotta drain the differential. All right, let's drain this differential. I just went against the usual advice, which is always take the drain out before you take the fill out, or I said it backwards. Take the fill out before you take the drain out. Now that is the case, I'll be honest with you. Actually, mechanics don't pay attention to this stuff because that's when you're laying down on your back in your driveway, and this is the car you're gonna take to work tomorrow. But when you're in the shop, whatever happens, we're gonna get it fixed. If the thing is stuck, we'll go as far as drill it out and get it done. So we're not worried about this stuff. A little bit of debris, nothing over the top. Actually gotta go get some new gaskets. I'll be right back. Okay, this diff was actually serviced not too long ago. I'm wondering why the fluid looks like that. I mean, technically we're not doing a service on the diff. I just need to lower the level a little bit. Usually I like to drain it all the way. You could pop the axle and it'll make kind of a mess, but I don't like to do that. Just drain the fluid, no mess. Now let's pop the axle and see if it wants to actually cooperate. Oh yeah, it came right out. Now let's see if this axle wants to cooperate with us. Okay, needs a little bit of a nudge. There it is. Oh, potentially gonna get a few drips of fluid. Yes, that came right out through. See, we're definitely dropping the labor on this because we didn't have to follow the book and do all this mess. I'm guessing the book's telling you to do that when you don't have the bearing out, but I actually, going forward, if we ever have, although they're very rare on these, if we ever have to do rear axles on a Highlander, we're just gonna pull the bearing. This is much better than risking all these. Half of them are C, especially when these things get old. But here's the axle. Notice the gleaming absence of the dust shield. Let's go put it next to the old axle so you can see it. You see it? That's all we're doing this for. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this axle, but you can't get this separate, and this is what covers everything. So that's a little unfortunate, but gotta fix the car, right? Can't half fix it. So this is unfortunately what we have to do. But now that we are doing this, we actually got to be very careful with that ring when we install the axle. So I think I can push this, go over here very carefully. So when you install axles, you want your ring over here, the opening to be at the bottom. That is the easiest way to install it. See how I have it at the bottom right there, the opening? Yeah. Are you engaged? Yes, it is. I could actually tap it from here. Let me go get a rubber mallet. So I'm gonna tap on the axle here. We gotta be real careful. Yeah, it went right in. Go see it right there. Show them how the axle is going in. Kind of hear it click. That all the way in. No, it's not. So I don't want to keep pushing on it here. I'm gonna try it a little bit. There it is. That's all the way in. The best way to verify is it doesn't want to come out. So here's how this works. In case you're wondering, well, what just happened here? What locked the axle? At the end, where is my old axle? Here's how that little lock ring works. Do you see how it like sticks out? So you have the bearing like inner part right here. So you're pushing this. When you push it, this will compress, go in. As soon as it clears it, it'll pop and it'll lock it against it. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of like there's an opening like this. This goes through it. When it goes on the other side, this ring pops out and locks it. So when you pop the axle out, all you're doing is, if it doesn't want to pop, that means it's in this position. It's just going to get caught up. But when you flip it and the opening is at the bottom, it actually helps it compress better. That's just how these work. So if you're trying to get an axle that's being stubborn, turn it and try it again. That's the easiest way to get them out. Well, at this point, we just got to add some differential fluid, which I'll do in a bit. But first, let me assemble everything here. This is going to be a little bit interesting because I want to start my bolt on the bearing. See how that deflector covers everything? And once the bearing goes in, it's going to center it and it's going to cover that opening. That's all that got damaged here, folks. Unfortunately, that's just how cars work. You got to be careful. Start one of my bolts just to hold it. So I don't think we're lined up. Wait, we're lined up. I don't like that. Let me see if I can start another one. There we go. That ain't going nowhere. See if I can start that bottom one now. I can't even reach the bolts. Started. Okay, that bearing is on. Lower the car. All right, we're all good. Bearing is in. Got to put our speed sensor on. So we're going to do in a bit. Let's put all the brakes back together. But before we do, always replace the axle nut. See, a lot of people try to save the axle nuts and then it doesn't go right. And it's just, this thing is, I think, 13 bucks. I mean, you're going to do this and not have to do it again. So just replace it. Now we're going to stake it. That's it. Folks, all that staking does is locks it in case, for whatever reason, this decides to come loose. It's not going to just come right out. And guess what I just found? I couldn't misplace it. Here's that old ring. How mangled up it is. That's after I tried to straighten it. But we got to a point where it's like, okay, you straighten these. What about this edge? And then I realized the sensor actually sits right in this groove. So how are we gonna perfectly get it where it doesn't affect the sensor? And then the biggest problem was, I'm like, okay, I can work on that. I can't even get this to go back on the axle because of the shape of it. And we're not gonna spend 2 weeks trying to get this to save the customer money. Who's gonna pay for the labor? You gotta always remember that you can't just spend, as a shop, you can't spend 3 days trying to save the customer 50 bucks. Well, who's going to pay for your time? Because the building, the landlord, the electricity, everything else, all the bills that the shop has, they don't give you a break to save your customer money. So you got to fix the car right. That is the focus of all shops. You start trying to kind of mend things, and this is something in the automotive shop, and this kind of the automotive shop world. You start trying to mend things, here's what's going to happen. Car will not be fixed right. You're still going to charge the customer. They're not going to be happy, and you're going to arrive at you are not a good shop, even though you actually try to go out of your way to save them some money. But the idea is not to save. This is the mentality of some shops that end up actually giving them a bad reputation. You're not in the business of giving people great deals. Look, if we can do it, we'd love nothing more than to give a good price and be great. We are in the business of fixing their car right. Fix it once, be done. No shop in the planet will tell you that 100% of the time that happens. Nobody's perfect. There's always situations you can't foresee and things happen. But we go in it with the intent that we're going to fix everything 100% and not leave any stone unturned, making sure that the priority is that the car is fixed right. Not the priority is we're going to see what we can mend to do it on the cheap. That is not a good mentality for a shop. I'll be flat honest with you. So, this is all done. All we got to do in this car is put the speed sensor. We're going to do a quick test on the scan tool so we can see if our sensor worked. Of course, we got to drive this tomorrow some more, but it's dark outside already. We're kind of welcome to the car care nut shop after hours. That's where we usually get a lot of stuff done, when it's quiet, no phone calls, no customers, no in and out, and everybody else is here. So this is done. Let's work on the speed sensor. So most of these speed sensors will have a bunch of brackets. Just take them out and kind of follow the chain here. I think there is one more, but before we proceed, I'm going to make sure that we route our new one the right way. Sure, this is the left. Yes, it says left right here. It says left right here. It says left right here. That's how you know this is the right side. So I'm going to get in here just to install the sensor in its place first. Actually, this was the bolt for the sensor. Get it in. That's the first step. Secure our sensor in place. That's taken care of. Now let's route this. Most of these are kind of self-explanatory. They're not really difficult to install or anything. You always want to make sure that they're routed the right way so they wouldn't interfere with anything. See, this is already, I think, flipped. Are you flipped? You have to be flipped. How is it flipped? I think the sensor was not installed right. Because, you see a little problem here. Come on, Toyota. Even the aftermarket is better than you. So I think they put this bracket backwards because I don't see how this would go unless it goes like that. No, that doesn't make sense. So something's going on here and I don't like it. Unless this goes on the other side. I think it does. Something is not making sense here, folks. Okay. Maybe this goes here. Yes, it does actually. So it was backwards. So you take it back. The aftermarket sensor had this was an aftermarket sensor that's here, folks. That was installed backwards. Sorry, folks, it's really hard for you to see because it's such a tight space. Not super tight, but tight for a camera, I guess, to get in here. Okay. I think I like that. Now he's got to lift the car up and get the sensor from the bottom. We're good. So, let us see here. Oh, this is one of those fun ones. So what I can do is see how we're gonna reach this guy. Probably gonna reach it from here. We're gonna need a different wrench. Okay, where are we at? There we go. Oh, that's actually, I don't think it's the right nut, but that should work. Okay, now it's a matter of figuring out which one is the new one, this is the old one. They're both technically new. One of them got a little haircut. Gonna go like... See, I just want to make sure, when I look at the other side, I just don't like how this is mounted. Yeah, that is the right way. Do you see how, if you look at this right here, do you see how they're both towards the back? So the aftermarket one was actually mounted here, but if you look at this side, they're also mounted towards the back. That tells me that is the right way, not the way it was before. Just verification. Little stuff like that can make a difference, because if you install it that way, as the axle goes up and down, as the whole suspension moves, you can actually stretch that wire and it fails early. Getting this nut here, that's a whole different story. Is this easier to access from the top? I just want to see. Feels like this is too complicated. Oh yeah, I have been doing it the hard way. Yes. So do you see what I'm talking about? This one right here. So the stud goes in here, and the stud is actually accessible from here, and I was trying to tighten it from the bottom. Now at least I can see it. It's a little interesting to install it. You gotta just get it just right to start it. There we go. That's it. I'm gonna plug in the sensor from here. That's it. Sensor is in. Make sure that it's flush. It is. Everything, actually I didn't tighten this one, I think. I did tighten these. We're done. I think this job is done. We just got to fill up the diff, put the wheel on. Let's fill that diff. We're all set. So here is what we are going to do now. Now that we got everything taken care of. Let me shut this off, shut the rear off. I am going to, so all the warning lights are still there. I'm going to erase them. And you got brake, lane departure, malfunction, all kinds of goodies. I'm going to erase the codes. And then we're just going to move the car. So when we initially diagnosed this, because I wanted to verify that we have an issue, you display the wheel speed sensor, so you still... not happy. When you reverse the car, it's all slow speeds. You'll see all wheel speed sensors pick up like speed except the left rear, which is the driver's rear we just worked on. So let me connect to this car. We'll erase the code and we'll see what happens. We should see speed signal now that the sensor is actually reading properly, not behind that little piece of metal. And go to ABS. I'll show you the speed signals once we get there. So we're going to erase this code. First, got to make sure that it does not come back. That's the main thing. Code is not back. Now, some of the warning lights will remain because we have to manually reset them. But I'm interested in, we're going to go to data list. Because I'm going to move the car. If I read all 4 speed signals, we're good. Because before, The left rear would just read 0. So let me find it. Here it is. I'm going to make a separate screen with it. And then we're going to see if Jose can zoom into this with the camera so you guys can see the speeds. Got to reverse the car just to see if we got 4 speed signals. Yes, see that? It's 1 mile an hour. Of course, we got to test it some more, but there you go. They're all reading. I think this car is fixed, and we're already having progress that we didn't have. So now that we got this, I'm going to do a health check. So the health check on the Toyota scan tool here checks every single module and displays all trouble codes. Because we're going to have all kinds of trouble codes. Some of them will turn into history now, from like lane departure, blind spot monitor. Every time there's a failure in the ABS system, all these systems get disabled, and they report, basically the code they'll have is ABS system malfunction, because it doesn't know what's going on, but it disables all these systems. Pre-collision, for example, of course, is going to slam on the brakes if there's a problem. That's not going to work. So there's 42 computers in this car, believe it or not. But I think we are good. Of course, we're going to still drive this car tomorrow. And it's late at night right now. Drive this car tomorrow, make sure everything is good. Make sure we don't have any noises, any weird stuff. Speed sensors are reading properly. And that should do it for this car. I'm really happy how this turned out. We're definitely going to lower the labor charge here, because I was ready for us to take the whole rear suspension to be able to swing that axle and get it out, but it worked out great. So I'm happy, but I want to tell you one thing while this thing finishes. As a DIYer, when things go south, don't be discouraged. Things are going to happen, folks. This is something even the professionals run into. You're working with a car, things will go south. Professionals usually, because we have the experience, we have the equipment, we have the facility that is meant to deal with situations like that, you just got to get through it. But there's a point in the DIY world where you kind of don't know what you're facing. For example, the owner of this car, he was not sure what's going on. Why is this sensor getting damaged? I don't see a problem. Wheel bearing is not making noise anymore. So it's like you hit kind of a brick wall. Don't be ashamed of that. It will be a shame on the mechanic that makes fun of a DIYer that got themselves in a situation like this. Because I get it, folks. When I DIY something in my house that I have no business DIYing, things go south, hey, it is what it is. We gave it our best shot, right? However, I will say, so we're going to erase all codes here. We just have some blind spot monitor codes and some four-wheel drive codes. That's pretty standard when you have ABS problems. One thing I'll tell you as a DIYer, before you tackle a job, go watch a bunch of videos. Go see what potential problems you could run into so you're fully aware before you tackle the job. Don't tackle a job as you are first time watching a video that walks you through how to do it. No, watch that video multiple times. Learn. Watch multiple videos, not just from one source. So you can, because every mechanic, there's a lot of mechanics on YouTube posting stuff, showing you how to do stuff, professionals, myself included. But everybody's going to have their way. You watch multiple mechanics do the same job, you'll notice they'll never do it exactly the same, and you'll pick up something from each one. So I encourage you to do that before. I do that when we DIY something and not a car related, something at home or whatever. I do that. Everybody do that. There's no shame in that. You're not born knowing everything. You learn as you go. And that's the best part about it. And I love how it's available today. So there you have it, folks. This car is fixed. We actually, as soon as we finished that little verification, I told Jose, let's just get in the car, go take it for a drive. I mean, it's dark outside. We would have taken you with, but we could test the car, make sure it's done. That's one more car done. We don't have to do anything with it. Actually, speed sensor is reading fine. Something with speed sensors is you got to verify. This is something I see a lot with Toyotas. If the sensor is not sitting right, and you could look at it initially, it looks like it's sitting right, but if it's a little bit on the side, what's going to happen is as you come to a slow stop, well, that sensor will drop to 0. That lessens the definition of the sensor. That's what that means. So when the speed is very little, the sensor will actually not pick it up, and it'll pick up 0, and you'll have erroneous ABS activation. That's very slow speed. This didn't do that, so we're good. It's reading proper. All 4 sensors are equal, so we're good. Folks, one more time. DIYers, research, educate, implement. Don't be discouraged. However, there is something very important that you know. know the limits. There's a lot of stuff, I DIY stuff too in my house around stuff that I have no business doing, but know your limits. When it comes to something that, okay, I've watched somebody do it, a professional, and this seems a little bit out of my comfort zone, listen to that instinct, because that's your basic mechanic instinct. There are jobs that I get into. I've been doing this for a very long time. This is my profession, my career. I get into and I am held back. I'm like, okay, this is a bit too complicated. We're going to have to prepare for it. Let's go dig deep into the manual. Let's research. Let's kind of prepare before we jump into it. Just like an engine job. You don't go immediately tear an engine down without proper investigation. It's kind of the same thing. That's doing your due diligence before you get into a job. Very important. I cannot emphasize it. And for the owner of this car, I will ask you guys a favor. Let us encourage him, because he did the bearing well. Everything went well with the bearing. He got everything right and no problems there. And I even told him that you did everything right. That one part you missed, it's kind of unfortunate, but things happen. So let us go in the comments. Let us give him a word of encouragement. He's a DIYer like all of us. For me, I don't DIY car mechanic stuff, but I DIY other stuff. So let's give him a word of encouragement. Let's not bring him down. Let's lift him up, because he's a member of the community as well. So I ask you to do that. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope it was helpful and informative. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.